Welcome to No Turtle. I am Nathan. Forgot my name there for a second. So we're going to talk about Hawkeye, episode 5, which is entitled Ronin, written by Jenna Noel Frazier and directed by Bert Bertie again. The spoiler-free summary of this episode is a fallout nearly derails their partnership, but Kate makes a discovery that changes. Doesn't really say much of anything, but there you go. That's the spoiler-free synopsis. Colin, what do you think of this episode?
Wow, there were a lot of big reveals in this episode, and it was very interesting to how they structured it in many different ways. There was one that people have been speculating online, but then there's another one that was really interesting in terms of adding to the threads of the whole kind of experience that you've had over the last 20 odd movies that you've had. So I think that definitely caught me by surprise about the first reveal. But the second review was more obvious because, again, it's been on speculated and things like that. And just the way that the characters have been presented and all, that's where it comes from. So, yeah, overall, I'd say we are getting toward the end. It didn't feel like a bridge episode. It feel like there was some finality to all the buildup that's been happening over the last 2 or 3 episodes. So in some ways, it's a good kind of, secrets are revealed. But then, of course, there's going to be more secrets, and we get to see that next week in the final episode.
Yeah, these Disney Plus shows, the penultimate episode, there's always like a lot of reveals. If you cast your mind back to WandaVision, and spoilers if you haven't seen WandaVision, the penultimate episode was the episode when Wanda went back and it was revealed what was going on, and Agatha took her through her life, her background. So in this episode, we got a lot of reveals in this episode. Also, this is a really good episode for. In the previous episode, we got a reveal that Florence Pugh, Yelena Belova, was the ninja. It wasn't a big reveal. It was obvious that's who that person was. So I would say that this episode was Yelena's episode, how it was written, but also just because Florence Pugh is a really exceptional actress, and she had some really standout performances in this episode. So I mean, really looking forward to digging into the specifics of that, but she definitely was the standout. And even though Kate has been growing on me over the last several weeks, Yelena stole the show, similar to the way she stole the show in the movie as well, in the Black Widow movie. So yeah, it was a really good episode. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next week, given everything that was revealed this week. All right, without further beating around the bush, we should jump over to spoiler talk. But if you are enjoying the conversation and want to join the conversation, please comment and subscribe to get more conversations like this. And we really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. So, spoiler alert after this point. All right, so I have some images from the episode. We actually start before we get the Marvel music. We actually start just before that. In 2018, we get a flashback to 2018, and we see Yelena doing what she said she was going to do at the end of the Black Widow movie, was basically go and free the Black Widows who were under the mind control. So she goes to this Black Widow named Anna, and she tries to subdue her and give her the antidote, and she come to find out that she actually isn't under the mind control. She's doing she's killing people for money. So this whole beginning section was really interesting. We've seen people come back from the blip before. I guess in WandaVision we saw them come back. We saw Monica Rambeau come back from the blip, but we've never seen a situation where someone has gone away and also come back. So they mention Anna mentions the mercenary work, but they also joke around about Natasha and she hanging out in New York like Sex and the City. So she goes to reset herself, and this is where she gets blipped away. We see her blipped away in 1 second and blip back, or snapped away in 1 second and then blip back a second later. And this is the first time we actually see what that looks like, because I guess Anna redecorated this bathroom in the 5 years. So it looks like the environment is warping around her. I think this was a cool effect. So she wakes up 5 years later. Anna is married and adopted a child, and that's how the beginning of the episode begins. What do you think of this code?
I think that this was very interesting. I think that it filled in a lot of the, like I said, a non-spoiler part, of filled in a lot of threads that were missing, and to figure out that time, if we watch Black Widow, the time between the jump from the end of Black Widow to the post-credit scene. So this is like a filler in some way, an epilogue to the Black Widow movie that you saw. And so filling in that gap. And also, yes, you're right, Nathan. It's very fascinating to see from the perspective of Yelena what happened to her when she, and it did seem like a blip. It wasn't like, because we've seen different perspectives of how people were snapped away from Thanos, snapping them away and then actually coming back. We saw with Monica, but then we didn't see it but we saw it in a different way with Yelena. And so it's fascinating in that it's almost like a sudden. And then she, in 5 seconds, she mentioned that she lost 5 years. And that's just, to me, it's just how kind of messed up it was in terms of how people were blipped away and then came back. And then it's as though like nothing really happened during those 5 years. It just kind of lost. And she was, of course, very traumatized and just despondent in the way that she reacted, because she just felt, I just lost 5 years in a blink of an eye. And you see it from her perspective and how it's beautifully acted by Florence Pugh. You sympathize with her. You're like, what the heck happened to me? And yeah, I think that there was just a beautiful scene overall. But of course, there's some other nice scenes that she has throughout this episode, which I really appreciate. And we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, so this is the beginning of what I was talking about earlier when I said this is her episode. She acts in a completely different way here, and she has the right pitch here for confusion after the blip, but also before the blip, when she seemed a little haunted by what she was doing, trying to wake up the Black Widows, and she's able to modulate her performances based upon the character's, I guess, personality, the way that the personality that she established in the movie, which is more definitely more lighthearted than Natasha's personality, but she's serious when she needs to be serious, and most of this is her being serious and also bewildered after she comes back from the blip. So I appreciated the opening here. So this is actually before the more Marvel stinger that we usually get. So after the stinger, we get a scene between Kate and her mom, Eleanor, at the apartment. So she's despondent, or not despondent, she's crestfallen because Clint has told her to go home, and her mom's just happy that she's home. And there's a scene in her room later on where Eleanor asks Kate if you think you're a superhero, and she says no, and does Clint, and she says no. So at this point in the episode, she seems to be hanging up the suit, and it doesn't look like she's going to pursue it. But things happen that push her back into the action. So we get a quick scene between Kazi and Maya. And basically the upshot of this scene, there's a lot that goes on in this scene, but it's mostly him trying to get her to stop pushing this. Like, after Ronin is dead, don't continue to pursue this. And then we find out later on why he doesn't want her to continue to pursue this or dig any deeper in this episode. So
yeah, definitely was Hawkeye really got to him, and just it's almost like you almost see him as though Hawkeye had that experience of going through all the trials and tribulations of watching friends die and things like that. And I think that he felt that he saw it in Maya through Kazi. Look, you shouldn't go through this. There's bigger things that are happening that why you shouldn't go through this. And it seems as though they are like the more inexperienced kind of rogue people that are out there, or vigilantes that are out there, while Hawkeye is more of the, Clint is more of the seasoned veteran who's, I've been through all this, I know what it's like, you shouldn't go through all that. So I think Kazi, having a little bit more experience, looked at it from the standpoint of, he may be making some sense here, maybe I should listen to him. And that's where this dialogue came in.
Yeah, and there's actually something else going on that's hinted at later on in the episode that I'll get to as well, for why he's pushing. But after that scene, we get a scene at Kate's apartment, because in the previous scene, her mom told her to go get her stuff. So she goes to her apartment to go gather her stuff, and she notices the window is open, and we see that there's actually someone behind her, and it's Yelena. So Yelena's there, and she wants to talk and also eat macaroni, and she makes fun of the fact that she has one utensil. So this is, again, Florence Pugh is hilarious in this scene. And this scene, and also the scene a little bit later when they actually do sit down. So they exchange some back and forth here. And I think that, like I said, I really like Hailee Steinfeld's performance in this show. But you can tell just in this scene, Florence Pugh is a little bit of a better actor. I appreciate what she's trying to do. Like, Hailee has to show that she's afraid. And she shows that she's afraid. Like, Florence Pugh is just so relaxed in this scene, and she's just dominating this scene, and it is just awesome. And it's nothing to take off of Hailee Steinfeld, because, like I said, she's a great actress as well. But, like, Florence Pugh was just awesome in these scenes.
Yeah. She just has that effect. I just think that she just has that magic. It's very fascinating. Just like when you watch the clips of her in Black Widow and the whole banter that she had with Natasha about the army jacket, about the jacket, and it was just like the reactions, the timing is just so wonderful. It's just like I watch that scene, I don't get tired of it. And I think that this scene about her describing something mundane as macaroni, it's just, she made it so appealing and engaging because of it. So I just feel that it's very fascinating, and that yes, it's just I think she just lights up the screen in a lot of ways. And yes, Hailee Steinfeld's a great actress too. It's like definitely trying to hold her own. But I just think that Florence Pugh is just kind of it maybe is her, but maybe it's the writing as well that kind of, and maybe just the wisecracking nature of the character enhances her performance a lot more. One other thing that I would like to say is that from the previous episode to right now the episode, it seems as though in terms of makeup and stuff on Yelena, on Florence Pugh, is a lot different than it was in the previous episode. I'm just speculating as to whether or not she probably did like that scene a while ago, and then she shot Black Widow, and then she came back to probably shoot some post-credit scene along with this. So it's very fascinating to see the difference between the two episodes. There's definitely a difference in terms of her facial features and just the lighting and the hair and the makeup. So it's just funny that it wasn't consistent. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just a little bit, there was some inconsistencies to that, which is interesting, but it's probably because of the shooting schedule.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to say, oh, it's a big deal or anything like that.
The reveal of her taking off the mask was probably shot at a completely different time, and they cut it in. They cut it in using a green screen, because the person fighting on the roof probably wasn't her at all. So yeah. See, and I also think it also seems like this is definitely after she shot the Black Widow movie, because I think it's actually definitely after she shot the Black Widow movie, because I think some of this was shot this year, whereas the Black Widow movie, remember, was supposed to be released like last year. So she has a very good sense of who this character is after shooting that movie, and she's very comfortable in this character's skin. Where, if you're being fair, Hailee Steinfeld hasn't had as much time to inhabit the character that she's inhabiting. Maybe that's why she's not giving as much in this scene. But
yeah, it's also fascinating in that we did mention in our post that it was Hailee Steinfeld's birthday. I think it was like a few days ago.
Yeah, she's
and
25,
so I think they're about the same age. They're about the same age, and I just saw like the differences and the nuances are very different. They're just different actresses, and you can appreciate both of them at the same time in different ways as well. And also, they both have done period pieces. They both have done different, like very similar things, because Hailee Steinfeld was Emily Dickinson, and I think that Florence Pugh has done like Little Women. So there's some similarities in terms of the roles that they've done it, but of course they are very different actresses. So it was a very interesting interplay that I saw between two really great actresses, like coming together and having that scene. I think that was, if you're like into movies, you just appreciate that very much.
Yeah, at the end of this conversation, the beginning of the conversation anyway, she convinces her to sit down, because she says that she could have, if she wanted to, she could have killed her. She's like, as soon as you came through the door, I could have killed you. And Kate is like, I probably wouldn't even have been able to close it. And she's like, no, he would have been dead. So we switch back to Clint, and Clint is, I think this is the first time we Clint in the episode. So Clint goes over to Grill's house to hang out and drop off the dog, and rest a little bit, because this is right after the fight. So this is the other thing that Yelena mentions in the previous scene. That fight was so long, so they must be very tired. So Clint hangs out at Grill's place for a little bit and tries to reset and make some plans, and then we get the rest of the scene between Yelena and Kate. So they share the macaroni. Yelena eats a lot of hot sauce sriracha, and then they go back and forth about Clint and whether or not he's a hero. And this is also the part where Yelena drops the bomb that she is Natasha's sister, and that's why she's pursuing Clint. She also drops the knowledge that this was a contract. She's not going after him because of it in vendetta. She said that this is going to be an easy assignment. So Kate says, if someone has hired you, this person is probably not the best person. So that apparently gets a bug in her head, because later on she actually does look into that. Yeah. The other thing is, like, when she finds out that she's her sister, she says, I'm so glad I didn't kill you. And that was the biggest laugh that she got. It was hilarious. That was the biggest laugh that we got out of Yelena in that scene. I think, do you remember if anything else in this scene was
I think that it was just, again, the warning of don't cross my path again, because I am going to do something to you if you dare try to do that. In some ways, it's still, you can see that Yelena still has that kind of coldness to her due to the fact that I think that you can still see her as more of a greater character. They're trying to establish that, not as all there, because, again, this is from the backstory of Black Widow, where she was maybe jealous of the fact that Natasha was an Avenger and all that. So there's still a lot of that baggage that's in play with her. So it was very fascinating that, having had that context of the Black Widow movie, you can definitely see that they're going to be adversaries. They're not all let's have a bonding moment and let's be young Avengers, that type of thing. It's not going to be like that. It's more of, let's be adversarial because I'm holding up a wall because of the trauma that I've had in the past. Whereas Kate's kind of like, what's going on here? Hawkeye is my hero. Clint is my hero because I saw him save New York as a child. So you're coming from very different contexts. Kate mentioned that, I think she said something about Russian, like something about, oh, that's so Russian or something like that. And it was just fascinating. The upbringing that both of them have is very different. And that shows in both of their personalities and how they interacted with each other.
Yeah, I saw. I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I think I saw it a little bit different, because I don't think that they're going to be at odds for very long. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be on the Young Avengers together, because I think Yelena is probably going to be more part of the Avengers. They're about the same age, but like you said, their upbringings are very different. Kate trained to be a superhero, but she wasn't like in a government program, and her childhood wasn't taken away. Yelena was killing people when she was a child, and she's in this matchup that they're both gonna be heroes, but Yelena could definitely kill her if she wanted to, because she's killed lots of people, and she's definitely more skilled than she was, because whereas Kate had the money of a rich parent to train her, Yelena had the backing of an entire government to train her, and like I said, a stolen childhood. So their skill levels are not the same. So
right,
yeah, I think that Yelena is definitely a more great character, but I don't think that they're going to be at odds for very long. I don't think she has any ill feeling towards Kate. I think that even in this conversation, we get a sense that she was listening. She wasn't just interrogating Kate. Even at the end, she says that thanks for the girls' night, and she says truly. I think she actually meant that she liked hanging out with her. So I don't know that there's going to be a long lasting issue between them, because she took Kate's advice and actually looked into who sent her after Clint. And then she jumps up in a very cool way. So we get back over to Grill's place, and there's a little bit of talk here about, I think, taking care of the dog, and then Clint conks out for a bit, and we jump back to Kate's house, where Jack is being taken away. So earlier on, I forgot to mention that in the conversation with her mother, she told her that Jack was implicated as the CEO of Sloan. And again, this is very convenient. It looks like that Jack is being taken away, and it looks like her mother basically framed Jack to me here. And yeah, and I'm not sure what her face here is. Like Jack is like, I'll be out of prison. I'll be out soon for your Christmas party, darling. Don't worry about it. It's Jack.
Right.
Jack is so funny. I've never worked a day in my life. I'm not a CEO of anything. It was hilarious.
That was strange to me. I think that he didn't work a day in his life. I don't really get that. Is it because he just made a money and then
He's
he
super
just
rich.
didn't have to do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's super rich. He's like a dilettante. He's never had to work in his life. So I think that's what that meant. Yeah, and he had no interest in working. So we switch over to Clint again, and he's at the site of, I think this is Grand Central Station, where part of the fight was anyway. So we have a plaque here commemorating the Avengers, and they actually have Thor's last name here, Odinson, which I thought was funny, and Clint's name here. He has a little conversation with Natasha, taking out the hearing aid so he can tune out the sound around. And he has this conversation, and he apologizes for what he's going to do, but I think at some point he decides not to do it. Like, he has this conversation with Natasha, then later on he has this conversation with his wife, and he decides not to do it. So, like, we're back at Kate's house, and Kate is processing all this information. Jack is arrested. Yelena dropped by. Yelena is Natasha's sister. So she decides to jump back in and try to contact him to no avail. This whole run is pretty funny. This is why I said, like, Hailee Steinfeld is also funny.
Yes.
It's just like when they were in the same room, like she was being a little bit outmatched. I want to see a scene later on when she doesn't have to play deathly afraid for her life, because she was playing deathly afraid for her life. Yelena was very laid back because she was definitely in control of that whole situation. But if they can, like, banter off of each other, I'm looking forward to seeing a scene like that.
That would be nice to see that. And also, it's very fascinating in that scene. It was where she just kept calling him until he blew up, until his voicemail got full, mailbox got full.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of it was a comedy called Blaze of Glory that did the same thing. So basically, Will Ferrell's character was trying to profusely apologize for something that he did wrong to John Hader's character. And so he just kept calling him like, dude, not a big deal, all that. This is very similar in that way. So it was, that scene was very funny. Like, she just kept calling him.
Yeah. So then we jump over to the Trust the Bro moving company with this Ivan and what is his name? I think it's the other guy's name. I guess it doesn't matter. I think it's Tomas, actually. So they get an arrow message from Clint saying to meet alone, and she doesn't really meet them alone. And then this is where he has a conversation. This is where he has the conversation with his wife. So I get more in this conversation. I get more of a hint that she was Asian. Do you think she was an Asian?
I think that just what I said the last time was that maybe Tony Stark knew it already just by that. Just by him bantering, like at that time when we watched Age of Ultron, it was like, oh, this is another agent, and these are mini agents. So you could get away with it in that he knew, or maybe he just be playing a joke as well. So maybe it was a retcon in a way where it's okay. He did make that joke because he found out all about S.H.I.E.L.D. already, so he kind of knew what was going on, even though it was still under the radar. So I'm leaning towards the fact that she was.
Yeah. I think there's definitely at least something going on with her. I don't know what, but I think we'll get a reveal. I guess there's no more reveals except for what's going on with the watch in the next episode. So I guess we'll figure out why she knows about the watch and what that has to do with her background in the next episode. So we're at the meet at the Fat Man's Used Cars with Maya. Another hint through the end here. She's not alone. Kazi's up here with a sniper rifle, and he's the first one to get taken out. This scene was out of a Batman movie. Like, I guess Daredevil also takes people down like this. Like, he's like moving in the shadows. He takes all of them out without them seeing each other. It's definitely, like I said, it reminded me of Batman, this whole thing. And then he reveals him. This is a really good fight scene. I'm looking forward to the Echo show. If they have more fights like this with just showing off her ability. But yeah, she did a really excellent job. I have to look up the stunt woman. This actress is an athlete, so she probably does some of her stunts, but some of this is also the stunt woman, because the stunt woman that did this, she was the stunt woman for Gal Gadot in the first Wonder Woman. So this is a really well choreographed scene. So at the end of it, Clint gets the better of her, maybe because he has a little bit more experience. He's, I don't know, 15 years older than her. And he takes off the mask to let her see, and she thinks that he's doing it so he can kill her. And she gets a drop on him, and then Kate finds them. So Kate finds them and shoots the blade out of her hand, and then they hobble off to an Uber. That's part of her.
Yeah, it just goes back to her kind of ordinary type of not very discreet ways of doing things. And maybe in New York City, if you're famous, you can get away with that because people maybe see people famous in New York City and they're like, they just bat an eye. And I've experienced that as well. Living in New York, people just bat an eye and say, oh, yeah, it's just ordinary. A celebrity would be in an Uber or something like that. But yeah, I just find it very interesting at times for someone who hasn't lived in New York to think about it. You're not like hero worshipping like how Grills was. So not everyone does that in New York. So it may be just that is believable, but at the same time is very interesting that the Uber driver did not bat an eye that, hey, why you have like bows and arrows and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure probably sees lots of different weird things being an Uber driver in New York. So I guess it wasn't a big deal to him. After this scene, we actually get the last scene of the episode, which is back at Grills. So we get information that we have actually no, sorry, not after this scene. Then we get the scene that I mentioned earlier. So it's obvious from this conversation that she suspects that Kazi was the person who tipped off Ronin under the instructions of the Kingpin or the boss or uncle, which is we find out later is Kingpin. So she doesn't give him all the information that you would think that she would give him because she's starting to not trust him here. And he's starting to realize that she doesn't trust him here. So in the car, this is where we find Kate tells Clint that the assassin, the Black Widow assassin, was Yelena. And we get this is a very sweet scene here, given that he told her to go away at the end of the last episode. Then we get a scene of Yelena following after Eleanor, and I thought she was going to attack her, but she doesn't. We get the other shoe to drop, and that is this text message to Kate that she found out who hired her, and it's Eleanor Bishop. And then the last thing that we get is this image of the Kingpin, and it definitely looks like, I guess, Vincent D'Onofrio. The image is very blurry, but I think it definitely is Vincent D'Onofrio there. And that's pretty much the end of the episode. The other interesting thing that I have here in our images is that the animated thing actually has the Kingpin in the background here. You see his outline? That was not there in previous episodes. So like at the end of the second episode, you can see that you still have the same thing, but there's no... So it was very subtle. The Kingpin has been looming in the background the entire time. So the Kingpin kind of sent Yelena towards Clint. The Kingpin is responsible for his father's death. The Kingpin is probably the person who asked for the watch. So yeah, he's been pulling the strings, as a Kingpin does.
He's the Emperor. He's basically the Emperor figure from this Emperor Palpatine from Marvel. Yeah. But it's interesting, though. I think that they're going to have to reconcile that. Is it that Valentina got hired by Kingpin? Is that how it was? Like Valentina's an associate? Yeah. What type of role does he have? How does she have in this whole thing? And does it go that big? Because we saw Valentina in recruiting John Walker. So... Yeah, I'll be fascinated to see how that dynamic plays out. If it is indeed that Kingpin is behind the scenes, being Emperor Palpatine in many ways, how far up does it go? Because we've seen him in the Marvel Netflix shows as being much more of a street level, running Hell's Kitchen, that type of thing. And when is Daredevil going to show up? It's been rumored that he's going to show up probably in the Echo series. All these types, like I said in the non-spoiler part, there's a lot that was revealed in this episode, but then there's a lot more questions and build up to the next thing. And this is what Marvel really does well, is that it builds up to the next thing to get you hooked on the next thing that they're working on. Kudos to them. It's gotten down to a science, like I said, in many other reviews that I've done, where they are doing such a great job with character development. They have A-list actors. The story flows. In this episode, there wasn't as much action. There was a lot more talking, but at the same time, it was just, I think, having them had that all these machinations come together is just, it's almost as though we take it for granted, and then when we see something like other episodes that we've reviewed, it's, oh yeah, we do take this for granted.
Yeah, I think that they are probably taking their time in reintroducing him, because I think that they're going to probably establish that this isn't the same as the Marvel Netflix shows, because as you said, he had a smaller scope in the Marvel Netflix shows because they couldn't get access to the entire Marvel universe, because they just could reference it. They referenced it from time to time. There's like the guy with the shield or whatever. They didn't even say Captain America. But in the comic books, the Kingpin is not just a local presence. He's the Kingpin of crime. So he's like the person on top of all the other crime bosses, not just in New York, but in a large portion of the U.S. And he has dealings in Japan. So I think they're trying to make him a bigger threat. He's making him an Avenger level threat. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they do that. And he's not going to be like the new Kang the Conqueror or anything, but he's definitely going to be a bigger deal. We might see... So we're going to see more probably of Eleanor and what her deal is, whether or not she's Madame Mask, but we also might see Carter.
Sharon Carter, yeah.
Yeah, we might see Sharon Carter and how she might be connected with him as well. So that should be interesting. And yes, he might show up in Armor War as well, because he's always about amassing power and influence. So I'm sure he's definitely interested in some of Tony Stark's tech. So... Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I will be very fascinated to see where he goes. Hopefully, they don't lose too much of the character development, because I think it'll be very interesting to see if they're going to wipe out everything, and that how they're going to present. Yes, there's going to be definitely some differences, but of course, in the Marvel Netflix, I mean, his character development in the first season of Daredevil was just amazing. It was amazing. Yes, it's just like edge of your seat amazingness, and it's just like, wow, it's just, and then his childhood, how he was abused and all that, it was just really good storytelling overall. So I hope that they do pay homage to that and say, or pay some salute to that in some way. But yeah, if you want to make an Avengers, but not, so that yes, we know that, yes, wink and a nod about that, but at the same time, he is this, like you said, an Avengers level threat.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see. Marvel technically owns those shows, but I think part of the ownership also is with Netflix. So like, what you'll notice throughout this episode and also previous episodes is that when they want to call back to previous properties, they'll play some motifs. So like when he was talking to Natasha, you hear the motif from Endgame. When at the beginning of the episode, when Yelena was infiltrating Anna's house, you heard the motif from Black Widow. You heard the musical motif from Black Widow. Sometimes you see clips from previous movies when they're trying to give you an idea what's going on. To pull in all his stuff, they would actually have to pull some clips from the Netflix shows, and I've never seen. I don't know if they can do that. And it's possible that Marvel has some really great writers there. Maybe they'll do it all over again. And they'll take another angle at his origin story. I don't know. But you're right. It was very well written, that first season, giving him motivation. I still think that season of Daredevil could have been 8 episodes instead of 13. So they did give him a lot of backstory, but probably they could have made the point without as much in that show. So maybe they'll do something similar and just do it more efficiently in the MCU. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, I think that's what we thought about the episode, but we really want to hear what you guys think. So please comment to join the conversation and subscribe to get more conversations like this. And we will see you next time. All right. Bye, guys.